Welcome to Mental Health and Faith, a closer look. I'm Carolyn Cooper, and my ministry name is Mental Health Connect. My mission is to offer encouragement and to help you find your way into this complicated world. There will be links and resources in the show notes. You'll want to check those out. Now sit back and enjoy the show. Hi, this is Carolyn, and welcome to another episode of Mental Health and Faith, a closer look. And I have a guest today that is probably one of the most interesting guests I have had on this show because he is a dentist and has a lot of interesting things to say connected with breathing, all kinds of things, and how that relates to our mental health. So I can't wait to learn from him. His name is Tim Doolin, and welcome to the show, Tim.
Yeah, thank you.
I would love to have you start off by telling us a little about who you are, your background, whatever you'd like to share with us that has kind of brought you to be on this show today.
I am a dentist in rural Angel Fire, New Mexico. We decided that we wanted to move away from the city. So me and my wife, actually, we used to live in Chicago. And when we got pregnant, we wanted to figure out, okay, where are we going to raise our children? What's our family going to look like? What are we looking for in life? And I wanted to own my own dental practice. And so the next step was figuring out where was that going to be and what all was our life going to look like. We decided we wanted rural, we wanted mountains, we wanted to be able to go outside with our children and not really worry about anything except maybe the animals. And currently that's what our house is. As you can see behind me, we are in the true mountains. If I move the camera just a little bit, it's a little too bright, but we've got mountain views and it's just incredible out here. But there are mountain lions running around. There's coyotes running around. It's very different. And a couple years into my practice, I love dentistry, but so much of me was driving towards healing the body. I wanted to heal people beyond just patching things. And I was sick of the healthcare system being this patch and repair system. And so I wanted to find something else where we are truly healing the body and providing a better lifestyle for people. So what I kind of ended up doing was just kind of going down a couple different routes. I really didn't find a connection. Me and my wife had been praying about what this would look like. And really, she's a nutritionist and a trained dietitian. She's stopped doing that with children and everything and become a stay-at-home mom and just caring for our family. And so I read a book right at the beginning of COVID called Breath. And it was a New York Times bestseller. A patient gave it to me and was like, I want you to do all this stuff on me. And I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. Sure, I'll figure it out. Because he knew I was kind of a MacGyver and would do anything. I just love doing just about every type of dentistry. And so I read the book, was absolutely fascinated by it, and decided to reach out to the dentist from the book. His name is Dr. Ted Belfour. He's in Manhattan. He recently passed away. I think he died in November. And when I reached out, it was the beginning of COVID and he was in Manhattan. So he was stuck in his house, not able to do anything. And he offered to directly mentor me and we were in Angel Fire. We were very rural. So COVID didn't exist up here. I mean, it did, but just very different level. Right. There was no lock in place or anything. I was still seeing patients and it was just very different. It was an awesome lifestyle during that time. And so he was able to mentor me directly on how he did things, what he did. And so then what I started looking at was how can I heal the body through breathing? And I've basically gotten to a point where I specialize in airway and facial redevelopment, growth and change, and then how to do that completely in natural ways. And what we started finding is all of the changes that when you start breathing properly and functioning properly, it changes your entire life.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The reality is there are two things that control 90% of our system: diet, breathing. Both of them start with the mouth. Mm-hmm. So when you read Genesis, the first way that God gave breath was not through the mouth. It was through the nostrils. We should never breathe through our mouth, ever. It is one of the most toxic and bad things to do for your body. The problem is with our society, so many people don't have the ability to breathe through their nose anymore because of the lack of development. The word we've created for it is disevolution. I found very early in this process that I was a chronic mouth breather, that I had all the classic symptoms of it, that had been what caused my body to start feeling really bad as a dad. And as I became more stressed and started piling on everything with children, I had gained 30 pounds. I was not eating as healthy as I should be. I was not breathing at all. I mean, my breathing was terrible. And so then I stepped my whole life back and started fixing myself. And it's amazing the changes that you start seeing and everything. And so now, fast forwarding a couple of years of doing this, I started teaching it. And so I get invited to a couple of seminars around the world, and I've been teaching with all these different people. And one of them is actually the doctor from the book Breath, Anders Olsen. And being with him is just absolutely incredible, and everything that we get to do together. And so he teaches the chemical makeup of breathing and the importance of the chemistry behind it. I teach the structure of breathing and how to make sure the structure is all functioning properly. And so going with that, what we're finding is the chemistry actually changes your entire lifestyle. So when you take a breath in through your nose, you create a chemical called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the most important chemical that we are never taught about.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, and most people aren't. So when we breathe in nitric oxide, so the air itself is 70% nitrogen. It's made up of mostly nitrogen, not oxygen. The oxygen makeup is usually like 16%. So in our sinuses, we have the ability to combine the nitrogen and oxygen to make nitric oxide. When nitric oxide is made for our system, we go into a parasympathetic state. So our body now becomes relaxed. We open up all the tubes of our body. So whether it be our lymphatic system, our blood system, our digestive system, everything opens up so it functions better. And again, we are starting to relax. Now, this is where mental health becomes such a important thing. Mm-hmm. If you are mouth breathing at night, you are stressed and you are going to create a problem. Now, it's not even with adults, it's not as bad as we're seeing with children. Children, due to the lack of breastfeeding, due to the lack of proper diet, they are not developing. And then they start mouth breathing. I mean, I see kids every day that are snoring. A child should never make any noise at night, any noise. Nothing is appropriate for a child. And it's important that parents understand this, because it is going to lead their child down a lack of development pathway to have problems going forward. We're finding that ADD, ADHD in adults and children is all linked to breathing. We're finding that most autistic symptoms can actually be solved with just changes in breathing and diet.
Wow.
We're finding all these different mental health disorders that exist in our children are because they can't breathe. They're breathing through their mouth at night.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I am fascinated, and because of my mental health background and such, I am a huge proponent of breathing exercises and training people to breathe. I do breathing exercises every day.
Mhm.
And, I am on board with this completely. But something that's surprising to me is just this idea. I'd never heard about breathing through the mouth as being really kind of almost a dangerous type thing to do, it sounds like, in the course of development. So how do we start training people, children, adults? How do we start training them to be more mindful of how they are breathing?
Yeah, so it takes a lot of training, because breathing exercises, those types of things, you can do those as much as you want,
Right.
but the reality is you are unconscious 90% of the day.
Mm.
So we have our conscious and our unconscious state, and we are truly only conscious 10%. The rest of the time, we have programmed our body to function without us actually being involved. I mean, if you've ever been in your car driving, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, how did I get here? Because you have functioned without your brain actually thinking about it. You've created programming. An awesome doctor, Bruce Lipton, wrote a book called Biology of Belief. And it's the idea that we can actually reprogram our stem cells, and program our functioning. And God didn't make any genes for problems. Yes, that you can inherit disorders in your genetic code, but it is a true disorder. It's not
it's not just a habit. Yeah.
We don't inherit these habits. We don't inherit mouth breathing. We don't inherit snoring. We don't inherit being overweight. Those are actually things that we have to program at some point, or deprogram. We have to ruin the genetic cycle. But we can change our stem cells and how they function. If it's not a true disorder, we can change the pathway, and that comes through diet. That is the number one thing. We call it the terrain. So the idea is you have to create the proper terrain for your body to function. If you go to any grocery store in America, or really in most of the world, you're going to see tons of products that are in bags and boxes, all these things. Everything in a bag and a box is destroyed. It is going to cause, it is some level of carcinogen, and it has tons of carcinogens in it. It has things that are going to destroy the genetic code. And that's what we have to start realizing. We have to realize that we can heal these things in our body, and we can make these true changes. Mental health is one of the biggest ones. And how do we heal that? And then we have to go down this cycle. And if it's a terrain issue, that's where I come in. I am not the expert when it comes to anything that might be a true mental or beyond that physical. Right. But those physical traumas that create this dysfunction for the body, that's what I try to heal with people. And so there's so many different ways that we can try and approach that, from completely natural all the way up to different appliances where we recreate spaces. And a big problem, or a big difficulty with all of this, is then trying to change the habits. And so often that is really difficult in our society, especially when it comes to diet.
My husband and I have been trying to incorporate a lot more of the Mediterranean diet into our diet, because yes, I do agree. A lot of the habits that we get in are harmful to our bodies and to our minds.
Because we've known about breathing forever.
Oh, yes. Yes.
There's an awesome book that was written in the 1800s called Shut Your Mouth and Save Your Life.
Ooh.
And he goes through and looking at tribal people in Florida, looking at the Seminole tribe. And he is looking at their habits, because they understood the importance of breathing properly in the 1800s. He also, goes back, and we know all the way back to ancient Egypt about tongue tie release. And the midwives would grow out their pinky nails and they would cut the underside of the tongue to release the tongue, because they knew a baby could breastfeed better, could function better. And when you breastfeed longer and better, then your jaw and your face develop stronger and better. Because the tongue controls most of the development of your face, and then your breathing and your whole facial structure. And I'm like, I don't know where I was going with that.
Right. That's okay.
But yeah, so the tongue actually controls your development in so many ways. There is a direct ligamental attachment from the base of your tongue all the way down to your big toe.
When I'm doing my breathing exercises and things that I do, what I'm wondering is if I need to consider a different approach to breathing exercises. And would you have any suggestions for that? Because I have so many different breathing exercises, but now I'm wondering, is there an element I may be missing in that?
Well, so there's a cool practice you can do, or anyone listening can do right now. And that is, try to breathe through your nose with your tongue sticking out first. It's easy. Mm-hmm. Now push your tongue back and try to breathe through your nose. You're going to make weird noises. It's going to feel funny. The difficulty that so many people face is their anatomy doesn't allow for the tongue to sit in the healthiest place possible.
Wow.
And that's because our jaws aren't fully developing. The reason the jaws aren't fully developing is because the tongue's not pushing. So there's three main things that go into the development of truly most of your anatomy of your face. So the first component to our development is gravity. Gravity is not effective for most people unless you are in a supine laying back position for an extended period of time during your development. So ages 0 to usually around 15. So unless it's a very extended period of time, we usually only see it in people who are paralyzed or have significant issues. It's like we look at seeds. You plant a seed knows the way up, no matter what. A seed will find, you can plant it upside down, you can plant it in any direction, it will find its way straight up. Now the next two are based on our tissues. So the cheeks push in, they're going to try and collapse things. The tongue is going to push out. The tongue's biggest form of development is during breastfeeding. And one of the biggest problems with our society, unfortunately, is since feminism, we don't breastfeed as long. And that's no knock on everything that goes on with feminism, but we have to value the importance of women in that role of development of our children. That is the most wonderful, strong role that a woman can have in our society, is to properly develop your child and improve that development and improve the growth, and to be nourishing your child in that way. And we have to make sure that mothers understand that value that they have in that role.
Wow.
And so the tongue really controls most of it, because your cheeks are always coming in. There's no changing the cheek development. But if the tongue isn't trained to sit forward and up, then it's not going to push the teeth out. So there's a guy by the name of John Mew. He's actually, he's in the UK. And unfortunately, he is under scrutiny and potential indictment and all sorts of things right now because of his natural treatment of children's airways. And he's being, they're prosecuting him for child abuse, is what they're calling it, because of his appliances train the jaw to come down and forward, and they are a lot. It's when a child is underdeveloped in their chin because their tongue never properly developed. He trains them to develop perfectly, and his son has taken it over. But it's a norm throughout the world that this is not standard of care to treat someone in a natural way or to promote natural growth and development. The standard of care, if your child has not developed properly, is let's take out some teeth. You have too many teeth in the mouth.
Right.
And so let's take out your teeth, pull everything together, and we're going to make it look pretty. Well, if you actually look at people who have had that done, they don't look as attractive. And no offense to anyone who's had this done, but the reality is if you actually look at the facial structure compared to our golden proportions of the perfect facial development, we've actually ruined that proportion.
Wow.
And because what we have done is on the side, we have pulled them back. And so it makes their nose look bigger. Their chin sits farther back. And then as your chin sits back, now your tongue, where's it going? Well, it's going straight in the airway. And so over 90% of the people who have that done end up with sleep apnea.
Wow.
And
this is just fascinating.
And so then you get sleep apnea, and then we can go down the whole mental health train again.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, sleep apnea, it's like being ready to fight a tiger 24/7. Even during the day, you can't properly breathe. And so those people, unfortunately, are always stressed. They're always trying to compensate for the fact that their body is never actually relaxed. And so that's what's going on with our children. That's why it's not an underdiagnosis thing with ADD, ADHD. It's not an underdiagnosis with autism. It's that we have ruined the terrain for the body, and we are headed down the wrong direction because of modern developments. Okay. And the word we're using for it is disevolution. We are headed the wrong direction. The reality is microevolutions exist on a lot of different scales, and it doesn't take a long time for microevolutions to happen. And we can watch it in just one generation.
You know, Tim, you have really enlightened me in a way that I've never heard a lot of what you're sharing. And so thank you so much for sharing this. And there's a lot of things for me and for our listeners to kind of digest and reflect on and think about. So what I'd like to do is make sure that I have the names and the authors of all the things that you've referenced here today, so I can put them in the show notes, and any other information you think would be beneficial, so that I can have that available in the notes so people can have that. But I'd kind of like to end with just a little bit more discussion on what can a person do who has not developed the right way, who may be having that issue of not breathing correctly, and can they do some repair work? Can they make some progress? Even like, say, me at my age.
Absolutely.
What can someone do?
There are so many things that we can dive into with this, but at the core, there's three main things that I talk about with people.
Okay.
I guess 4 if you include exercises. And so we can talk about a simple exercise that everyone can do. And so we'll do that after. But then there's 2 awesome devices that I talk about with so many people, and those are, first, the Remplenish straw. So the straw from Remplenish was invented to retrain your tongue to breastfeed.
Oh.
And so the idea is, in order to use the straw, you have to push against it with your tongue the way that an infant suckles.
Okay.
And so I recommend that people drink through this straw very consistently throughout the day to train your tongue to come forward into the roof of your mouth.
Okay.
So first, we're training the tongue through that. The other thing is, let's try to redevelop the face, and it, without actually going into so many things, because there's appliances and all of this. One of the easiest devices that has been created for this is called a Myomunchee. Myomunchee. So the Myomunchee was invented as basically a chew toy. And this is wonderful for all ages. If you notice that, okay, my child might be snoring, my child's having all these issues that we've been talking about, the Myomunchee is one of the greatest places to start, because it is going to just promote more growth and development. And it is very important that we are actually working all the muscles out, that we are allowing for that proper flexion and tension. And all of that goes into why people have migraines, why we see so many problems with TMJ disorders. And there's so many rabbit holes to go down. But those two appliances are two of the easiest things.
Okay.
Now, the next one, if you do have a well-developed airway, you have not been diagnosed with significant sleep apnea, one of the best things I can recommend to any person is tape your mouth shut.
Wow.
So, at night, wear a strip of medical tape from the top lip to the bottom lip. For me, because I struggle with chronic mouth breathing, I have issues with my nose, I keep the sides open because it makes me claustrophobic if I close it off. And so I just go from top lip to bottom lip. I literally use maybe a square inch of tape, and it holds my lips together just as a trigger to breathe through the nose. The nose is a use it or lose it. The more you use it, the better it'll start working. And so all these people with allergies, asthma, so many of these issues are caused because we aren't functioning properly and we aren't using our nose.
Wow.
And so what we need to be doing is when you start feeling, oh, my allergies are coming up, make sure you are taping and getting yourself breathing through your nose. There's a liquid called rocket fuel that I'll use sometimes if I start feeling my allergies coming up, and I'll put just a couple of drops on it on my tongue. It's basically different oils like eucalyptus and tea tree, things that really promote opening up all the soft tissues. And it's a short period of time, but once you get yourself able to and comfortable and you fall asleep, your body will start functioning without you. And so you just have to make sure that you are getting to that point in a healthy way. So those are the three. And then the fourth is exercise. So I know you asked me about, what recommendations I have for breathing exercises. And I do recommend breathing exercises. What I recommend is usually called like an inward out breathing technique. Basically, the idea is we want to expand our airway. Now, the biggest way to do that is restrictive exhalation. So when I breathe in, it's through my nose. When I breathe out, I'm imagining blowing out 100 candles in front of me during this exercise. And so it should be a long exhale of blowing and get out all the air before you take a breath in. Now, another part of that I add into it is you do want to be restricting and holding your breath for periods of time. Carbon dioxide is incredibly healthy for our body. Unfortunately, we're told it's toxic and all these things. Yes, in extreme amounts, it is toxic, just like oxygen. You don't want either one out of balance. And so the goal is to create that balance. But when we are trying to get in a more relaxed state, you actually want more carbon dioxide because more carbon dioxide is going to bring in more oxygen to the cells.
Wow.
And so what I recommend the exercise look like is you can imagine a box in front of you and box breathing, except my exhale is significantly longer than my inhale. But I hold on both sides of it. And during my hold, I actually will try to swallow and force my tongue forward into the roof of my mouth. And then the other exercise that I teach is called a cave technique, cavern technique, suction. There's all sorts of different names for it that you can look up. But essentially, the idea is to train the tongue. And it's like planking for your tongue. Planking is very difficult to do for extended periods of time. This is not going to be an easy one. And for some people, it's almost impossible because they have tongue ties and those types of things. If you are one of those people, you should look at talking to a tongue tie center or talking to someone around you who can take this more natural approach. So what you do, you take the tip of your tongue, put it on the back of your front teeth, and then suction it up to the roof of the mouth like you're about to make that pop sound, but don't release it. And so it should look more like this. And you want to be able to see under the tongue as far back as possible. So you really want it suctioned up to the roof of the mouth. And ideally, you can get to a point where you can hold that for 5 minutes before bed.
Wow.
If you can start holding that for 5 minutes, and you'll feel the release of the muscles even down in your neck. You'll feel all the tension releasing. It's just a great exercise for tension release, for your neck, for your spine, but also to improve your breathing, because now you're training the tongue to healthy sit in that great spot.
Okay. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Well, Tim, you're going to have to come back, because I can tell we've just barely scratched the surface of this topic and your knowledge. And just for my listeners, the title of this show is Mental Health and Faith, a closer look. And this is a closer look to something I've never even considered. And so I am very excited about this. I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Are you writing a book, or have you written a book, or would you like to write a book?
Yeah.
To summarize what you have learned through Dr. Belfour and the Lipton book and all of the things that you have kind of put together.
So there's two actually. I have currently 2 plans for books. Okay. I just have to sit down and write them. And so the first one I do want to write is something where it is, I want one that's more from a Christian perspective.
Yes.
And so I really want one where I am citing all of the biblical aspects of how to properly breathe. I
really would love you to come back and maybe do an episode with me later that talks about that biblical support for the techniques and the things that you're talking about. Thank you so much for all the wisdom you shared, and we will be in touch.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too. Thanks for joining me today, and please share your comments. Join the conversation on mental health and faith, and I would love to hear from you. My email is Carolyn, that's spelled Caroline, Carolyn at carolinscooper.com, and my contact information is also in the show notes. Have a blessed day.